I do want to talk Will Smith, Anthony. He's been really bad. Everybody who watches this shows knows that I'm a huge Will Smith fan. 0 for 4 tonight with 2 strikeouts. Again, we just talked about the 1 strikeout. The OPS on the season remains solid, 750, and yet we know how bad he has been, not just for the last few weeks, but for the last few months.
Yeah.
All that said, I'm still surprised at how negative the vibes are around Will Smith when it comes to the interactions that I have. And I know, look, social media is one thing. Not everybody, the loudest people are not necessarily representative of, but, and I'm not even saying like flat out, these people are crazy and these people are wrong. I'm just trying to make sense of it. This is a guy who has had a bad second half this year. He had a bad second half last year. And yet over the last 4 seasons, has more wins above replacement than any catcher in Major League Baseball. So just give me your like zoom out a little bit, take off the hat, the fan hat for a second. Like, is there reason for serious concern and negativity towards Will Smith as far as skepticism of whether or not he's going to break out of this?
Yeah, I think it's been too long to call it a slump. It's kind of the way his season is going at this point. Like you said, there are some still silver lining numbers that are hanging out, but I think, yeah, and like I said, I've said this before about him when me and you are on. I haven't seen the story yet, and I may have missed it. I'm not saying that it hasn't been written. Maybe I just didn't see, but I haven't seen the story yet that talks about like, here's what the coaching staff or here's what he feels is not going right. Here's what's off. It's mechanical, or it's maybe he feels like he's chasing pitches that he shouldn't be, or whatever the case may be. I haven't seen that story yet, and so I don't know what they see as the issue right now.
Yeah.
We've said it before, like, you wish you could afford at that position to give him an entire series off.
Yeah.
Something like that. They can't right now. Also, like, he's becoming a better defensive catcher.
Yeah, he's one of the best in baseball.
Yeah, and this is a 10-year contract. He's not going to catch for 10 years of it. So at some point they're going to make that decision. But like, you wish that he could DH, but then you got Ohtani. You wish he could play first base, but then you got Freddie Freeman, who plays essentially every day. And can he learn third base or something like that? Like, we're going to find all this out, later on down the road during the life of this contract. But I think we're beyond a point where like it's a concern. And is he going to break out of this?
It's interesting because the underlying stuff, just pulling it up, all remains just about everything is 60th percentile or higher. And I'm not saying 60th percentile is good. Don't hear me wrong. But I'm saying for a guy who's had a 200 batting average, it feels like for 5 months to look down and say 72nd percentile for barrel rate, 66th percentile expected slugging rate. He doesn't whiff. He doesn't strike out. 69th percentile for walk rate. Squares it up 61% of the time. Hard hit 60% of the time. 60th percentile. I'm just looking at these numbers. And so again, I'm genuinely trying to step back and say, I don't know what is happening here. I'm encouraged that the underlying stuff does not line up necessarily with the actual performance, although expected batting average is really bad. So expected batting average, actual batting average, those two numbers line up. But is there an element of bad luck here? Is there an element of some of these numbers are buoyed by just how incredible he was for the first 30 to 45 days of the season? Like, I just genuinely don't know what's reasonable to expect for the guy moving forward.
Yeah, I think I'm beyond the point of thinking like if you keep running him out there every day, he's just going to magically break out of it, because it's been too long. It's not like this is a 2 or 3 week slump where like that still feels like a possibility.
Yeah.
This feels like he's having a bad season now. And that's tough. And the fact that the lead is only 3 games at this point means that they really can't afford to say, take these next 2 games against Baltimore off, and we're going to also give you the first game against Arizona or something like that, right? Like they're not afforded that luxury anymore. And so, and they're not afforded the luxury of him being a DH for a while because they have Shohei.
Yeah.
So, you just, and I mentioned the defensive aspect of this because they do now want to keep running him out there because he's doing a really outstanding job of helping control the running game against this with this pitching staff. And so you have to continue to put him in the lineup for at least for that reason.
Yeah.
But he's a hole right now. And
Yeah.
it's tough because you keep waiting for him to like run into one at least and be like, oh, okay, that's maybe that's it. And he's not doing it.
Yeah. I'm smiling because two things. One, I want to talk about Dalton Rushing, but I'm smiling because when I've been critical of Kevin Kiermaier, I've gotten crushed for it because everybody tells me how important the defense is with Kevin Kiermaier. And yet when Will Smith is one of the best, if not the best defensive catcher in baseball this season, 100th percentile in caught stealing above average, it's all DFA Will Smith, and I know the DFA stuff is a joke or a troll, but like it's interesting to me. And I think it just speaks to expectations. Like if you walk in with Kiermaier and say, we know the bat's not going to be great, but we like the defense, then you are pleased with it and you become defensive. And I know I see Matty Man saying Kiermaier isn't hitting fourth. Smith's been hitting like seventh ever since Muncie's come back and Lux was up. Smith's been hitting seventh. So where he's hitting in the order doesn't have anything to do with this conversation. It has everything to do with expectations, which I think is fair. Like, and I'm not saying that's wrong because Will Smith, you should have higher expectations. The Dodgers just paid him. This is an all-star level type player, but I think it's just interesting the way that we frame defense. But I want to shift this to Dalton Rushing because he was in my notes, and this is the perfect sort of transition. He had 2 home runs tonight. Dalton Rushing's hitting 343 with an OPS of almost 1,100 at AAA. And before you say, oh, AAA numbers are inflated, go look at his AA numbers. The guy has hit absolutely everywhere he goes. And I think, I joked about Dalton Rushing possibly getting a 26th man call up to see what he's got in left field or something like that. I mean, I think we're seriously veering towards I'm hesitant to put a number on this, but like, we can't be that far away from, well, let's just see what happens if Dalton Rushing starts catching some games at the major league level and hitting. Like, does Will Smith get a 2-week vacation? Dalton Rushing comes up to catch some games? Because if Smith is this bad, Barnes is no better. We know they don't like Fiducia. Like, it feels like you're nearing the point of, well, do you just try it and see what happens? He is a catcher. Like, he can catch. So it's not like you're squeezing a square peg into a round hole here, even if the defense is a downgrade.
Just because I haven't looked at the lineup at OKC, is he mostly playing the outfield right now, or is he catching also?
That's a great question. I know he had been playing a lot of outfield for OKC. I'll see if I can pull that up as you talk.
My greater point to that is at this level, and when you're really playing for something, it's more than just sticking a guy at that position because he might be swinging a hot bat in the minors. This is about their first, and you know what? The entire reason they're dealing with this slump from Will Smith is because they like how he handles the staff. So to say, well, let's just run Dalton Rushing out there because he has a OPS above 1 in the minors, it doesn't play in this particular situation. Catcher's really the only position where like it's really different than the other 7 positions out on the field.
Yeah.
Because that guy also has to be handling a pitching staff that you are looking to lean on to take you to the World Series. And I can tell you right now, they're just not going to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I see David here, primarily left field. He's played 16 games, 143 innings. He's played exclusively left field. Maybe he's and a couple games at designated hitter. So only left field. He did catch 39 games at AA. So he's got 324 innings of catching experience this season. But, I'm with you. I'm just saying, like, we're all looking at the numbers. And again, I'm a Will Smith guy. I'm not even defending it. Like, I think we're getting to the point where, the argument had long been, well, Austin Barnes, game calling, you just give up all the rest of that stuff. And you just take, that's why Austin Barnes would catch games in the playoffs. Will Smith is that guy. Like, Will Smith from a defensive non-off, like if you take offense off the table, Will Smith is now the non-offense valuable catcher that they have because of the way he controls the running game. Mm-hmm. And so the question is, they valued that in the past. Do they continue to value it in the form of Will Smith and not Austin Barnes? Or do they throw a dart at the board and say, Dalton Rushing, let's see what we got. He doesn't need to be added to the 40-man even next year That's kind of the tricky part, I
Yeah.
believe. I believe his Rule 5 year is not until like a year and a half from now. But I just think it's an interesting conversation. And Anthony, the longer this slump goes on, to your point, it's not a slump anymore. It's you know May, June, July, August, 4 months, 3.5 months now. I think there's questions that are going to be asked, and I think Dalton Rushing is a guy that if he continues to do what he's doing down in Oklahoma City, rightfully so. So let me just ask you straight up: if 10% chance Dalton Rushing is catching games for the Dodgers, under
0%
zero
chance.
percent chance. I like that. You know what, Anthony? I'm gonna give you this. I like the definitive nature. There's no hemming and hawing on that. There's no sitting on the fence.
No.
0%. I respect it.
And
I'm gonna
and I
take the
could
over. I'm gonna take the over. Give me 10%.
okay, all right.
Dalton Rushing catching games for the Dodgers.
Um, then I will say this: if it happens, it won't be anything meaningful. Like you're tied for the division the last 10 days of the season. They're running him out there behind the plate. That's not going to happen.
Okay.
If he is a call up in that situation and they want to give him some innings behind the plate, it'll happen early on probably.
Yeah.
I could listen to the case of like maybe they run him out there in left field and see what happens for a little bit, but Teo's not struggling like that, right? Like, once they moved Mookie out to right, they had their outfield set for October, assuming everybody's healthy and fine. So even that is a little bit of a stretch, but yeah, I'm 0 real innings behind the plate for Dalton Rushing this season for the Dodgers.
I like it. I like it. I appreciate your commitment to this. Let's get